We get C-suite leaders together in safe conversations so they can ask questions that you really can't ask your peers because you're supposed to have all the answers, is one of our arguments. And we've always found that as a key part of our impact to the real leadership fabric of this great community, of being there for those leaders when they have no one else to call.
I am joined now by Mike Sipple, who is the, you wear a couple of different hats. Mike is the CEO of Centennial, which is an executive search firm. And then there's also Talent Magnet Institute, which is a way to train people in leadership skills and developing talent so they can be kept and retained in the positions that they're in. Yeah. Mike, thanks for coming on the show.
Jack, thank you so much for having me.
I think it's interesting, the two different companies that you run in cooperation with or in tandem with at times with your dad, and the way that it's so focused on leadership in this city, in a city where, like we talked about just before, has so many different companies and leaders' heads in it.
That's right.
There's got to be no shortage of talent for you to have to work with on either side of the equation.
Yeah, and we have a great region. So it's an opportunity for us to also help organizations in this region bring new leaders to the region, help organizations grow in the region that gives them the ability to then go attract more people to the region as well as retain them from here as well.
Yeah, it's a machine that sort of feeds itself,
That's
right?
Correct.
When it's operated correctly.
When things are operating right. Yes.
And that's sort of where you guys come in as far as the role that you play. Centennial finds talent and matches things up, whereas Talent Magnet, TMI, continues to develop and creates, further develops leaders.
That's correct. So we kind of say we focus on the leadership of an organization. We help you attract, recruit, and onboard leaders, and then we help you develop said leaders, and then help your teams be even more effective working together, which is a real key part of what Talent Magnet Institute does and why it was started. So the search firm, our executive search firm, we just crossed over to our 51st year.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And our executive search firm 9-10 years ago, our board at the time really challenged my dad and I and our leadership team to think about, you build leadership teams, and those leadership teams call you to get advice on how to invest in their team and how to help their teams be more optimal. And 8 years ago, we launched Talent Magnet Institute. TMI, you can never have too much information on leadership, and that's what we've been doing since that launch. Yeah,
the Centennial, congratulations on the 51st year. Yeah. That's the idea of running a business that's been around for that many decades. Is that invigorating? Is that daunting? How does that feel for you?
On some days, it can be all the above,
a little bit of both.
Even on the same day. So, yeah, it's been a great opportunity. My wife and I took over from my parents 8 years ago, and the last 4 or 5 years ago, it's like they're able to do the great things that they enjoy in their life, and we're able to lead a team with an incredible leadership team that we have in our organization now, and have our own advisors and colleagues around us. To take a family business to a next generation is very, very difficult. This current summer that we're in, we have the 4th generation interning with us. So my oldest son, who's getting ready to head off to the University of Kentucky, is interning with us. So that's also like, let's not forget the special moments, right? Right now, the 4th generation is in the room. So
yeah, and when you're mixing family with business like that, is it tough to remember the personal family elements, and get so bogged down in the work?
Yeah, I would say. It's probably the most difficult part about family business. So our family business has had the pleasure for the last 5 decades supporting other family businesses. Yeah. When I went through back in, I think it was 2004, 2005 was when my dad and I had the first discussion about, do you think you would want this to be your ongoing career path? Yeah. And that's when we had the opportunity to go through a organization called the Gehring Center, which is a part of the University of Cincinnati, to really learn and grow about what does a family business mean. With that being said, we've supported family businesses, so like we're the experts for everyone else. We need to take our own medicine.
There's an interesting, like, sort of meta thing to this whole discussion 100%. In that, you know, when you had this conversation with your dad 20 years ago, that was essentially the start of succession planning and helping other companies, which is what you guys do too. That's right. You're cooking for yourself.
That's right. Yeah, and we took our own medicine, meaning that we went and got experts to come into the room with us,
Yeah.
right? So we weren't on that journey by ourselves, and we were able to not just respect the fact that we're going to have at some point a generational change, but generations bring new approaches, new styles, new visions, new ideas. And in order to do that well, you also have to give the next generation the opportunity to build his or her team. So that's what we've done, is we've put in our own board, our own advisors, our own team to help us grow, which is also a part of when we launched Talent Magnet Institute. If my dad were sitting here, he would say, I've dreamed of this for 48 years. And this generation, put it into working order. He helped me find the vision for it and see the impact of all of these teams we support. They need more than just hiring great people.
Right.
They need to invest in themselves and the teams that they've now put in place. And then that's when we said, you know what? Let's do it. This generation is going to bring that to life.
Yeah, growing and retaining that talent, because being able to develop someone who's already sort of on the inside is just, economically, it makes more sense 100%. Than going out and bringing in somebody new and starting from scratch.
Yeah, and so few are reactive. They delay decisioning, which is what causes a lot of times the need to go to the outside, is we haven't brought up the talent inside. The other thing is we have a unique place around supporting C-suite leaders and being that safe place. So we have masterminds and roundtable programs that we offer. We get C-suite leaders together in safe conversations so they can ask questions that you really can't ask your peers because you're supposed to have all the answers, is one of our arguments. And we've always found that as a key part of our impact to the real leadership fabric of this great community, of being there for those leaders when they have no one else to call.
Yeah, I think you had an interesting post on your LinkedIn just recently about the idea of someone in a leadership position and how part of their job is to help develop their people, but where do they go for their own self-improvement? And that's something that TMI also offers?
That's something we're deeply passionate about. So it's kind of our fabric and framework. I say jokingly that TMI was founded as an asterisk in our strategic plan. And we had this asterisk that was on our strategic plan that said add more value to a client. And as clients would ask us things outside of search, we would start keeping track of, well, they've asked us to help introduce them to a few additional CEOs in the community. They've asked us to introduce their C-suite team to the right area to get learning and development. They've asked us to help them bring in a couple of executive coaches to work with their team. Those are all now services that we now provide because of some key clients during our succession who was like, it'd be a whole lot easier if you just did this for us. So I say innovation can come from many places. The best place innovation comes from is from your customers.
Yeah, sure.
And we heard that in some of the previous segments you just led, that brands listening to customers is critical. And that's kind of what we've done and what we hope to continue to do.
Yeah, it's got to be a weird balance between, wanting to innovate and come up with new ideas and then also reacting to what your people are telling you. It's got to be difficult to walk that line sometimes.
That's right. I will say we have invested in, even with TMI, we've launched products that nobody wanted, because we thought it was a great idea and didn't spend as much time with the customer to identify, is this really what you need? You may create ideas that you innovate, that you believe is what they ask for, until you bring it to them and they go, well, I actually was looking for this. So we don't want digital learning platforms, which is what we had 6 years ago with TMI. We want you to bring us in person with other humans.
Yeah.
And like just today, while you and I are talking, there's a group of leaders in our offices meeting as a mastermind together as C-suite leaders who are spending time and investing in one another, building friendships, learning what each other are doing inside their respective businesses. And that gives them a lot of value. One of our members consistently says this is the best executive coaching I've had in 35 years of my career.
Wow, no kidding. That's huge praise.
Yeah.
That's tremendous. And from what I've seen, some comments that you've made in public statements, really leaning into the human aspect of that. Right. Lord knows we talk about AI a lot, and that's a whole different animal, but embracing the human element of things, which I wanted to ask you, I think I know the answer to this, but the idea that also includes the flaws that we have as people. Like that figures into the whole recipe.
Sure. Yeah, we are a whole person. So any organization, there's a lot of organizations who say bring your whole self, and then when people show up, they're like, oh,
maybe not that.
Don't bring those aspects. Yeah, right. But we are the same. We are the same person. We are at work. We need to be at home. We need to be able to bring things we learn in the boardroom and in executive meetings and in executive coaching into our houses and into our friendships and into our community work, right? We need to get more involved. And I know my wife and I use this example often. For years, I spent time going to leadership development conferences. And I would either go, I'd get flown there by a client, or I'd go with a couple of colleagues. You go there, you get all excited. You come back, you realize that the other 12 people around you didn't experience anything they just experienced, which is why part of what TMI does is we work with teams, because we want those teams to learn and grow together. But I did that for my professional career for the first decade of my career and realized, why aren't I spending this much time with, arguably the number 2 most important relationship in my life, which is my wife. My first one's, my savior. And wow, we should really do that. We should go spend time. So we started doing marriage leadership retreats. Oh, wow. So as we work with our leaders, we encourage them to do that. There's a group of 2 clients and one of my employees today who just flew out to do a women's retreat in Brazil last night. We do retreats. I go to retreats in Wyoming and Montana once a year. My wife and I are leading a couples retreat in Wyoming in February. And that's all attached to the ecosystem of what we do as a brand. We want to be there to support leaders. We want a leader to say, Mike, I know you go on these retreats. I've never gone on a retreat like that. Yeah. I was recently in a conversation like this one with a retired executive from Fifth Third Bank. And she had an epiphany at a retreat in North Carolina. And we talked all about that epiphany she had that led her to retire and go develop her own organization and also launch a nonprofit. Like, lots can come from giving you space to think. And,
I mean, that's the idea of like those shower moments, right? Where you're not stuck in an office that you've been in for 12 hours staring at the same blank screen, like having that moment when you're in the shower and all of a sudden something hits you.
Yeah, there's a lot of feedback even to CEOs and C-suite executives. You have to give yourself space, because the best ideas and best innovation, I argue, are going to come from your team, not from you, and are going to come from you giving yourself space. Yeah, that's where innovation comes from.
Trying to find the balance on things. We've got a lot we still need to get into, but we've got to balance things with a break.
He came to me, again, closed the door and said, I need some help. We have a cash flow problem. And he said, we need $10,000 to get us through. And so he said, if you have any ideas, let me know. That night I went home and went over to visit my dad and said, Dad, I just need to run something by you, not for the purpose of getting money, but just give me some advice. After he listened to what I needed, he didn't say anything. He just walked out of the room, came back with a check for $10,000. I thanked him, took it in the next day, gave it to Mr. Morris. 30 days later, he wrote the check with interest back to my dad, and he never forgot that. I think that solidified our relationship there. It was through my dad, but he appreciated that very much.
Welcome back to the Working Lunch. I'm with Mike Sipple, and that is a clip from the podcast that you do, Unconventional Leadership. And that was a clip specifically from, I believe, the 250th episode, where it was you and your dad.
Yeah.
And, we were talking in the last segment about separating out and dealing with personal issues when it comes to family businesses. That looked like it was a tremendously emotional moment on the show.
It was. That was a tremendously emotional episode, and quite the honor, to be honest. And I released it on my father's birthday, which was also pretty cool. Yeah. How timing lined up. But yeah, and I learn things every time I have a history lesson of the history of the business that I run, which is one of the joys of family business. There's always things to learn about special moments in the timeline and the history of what actually makes organizations happen. So that's what I shared. A lot of people know that I'm a third generation in Centennial, but we actually are second generation family, because my dad was the first employee of another husband and wife who did not have children. Yeah. And that clip right there shares, that was within the first month of his employment with them. Wow. When this happened. So
when you're doing a show, doing a podcast, that's a whole other element to what you're already doing with the, the leadership placement with Centennial and Talent Magnet Institute, the development for folks. Now you're doing a show on top of that. Yeah. I know how much work goes into doing a podcast, and I'm sure maybe you've got a bit of a team with you on that. Yes, but that's a whole other level of work to do.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I learned, I mentioned earlier, around my board that encouraged us to go develop this leadership development organization, one of my board members, Dr. Janet Reed, challenged me to either write a book or you need to try this podcast thing.
Okay.
Why? Because as I referenced you, we try to create safe space for leaders. So a great safe space for leaders to listen and learn and grow is a podcast or a book. So that's why we launched the podcast. So I remember Janet saying, you know, all of those powerful conversations that you and your family and your team have the opportunity of sitting in a room, in a boardroom with someone in a private office, at a restaurant, in a private conversation.
Yeah.
Through a podcast, you can bring those stories to life and have thousands of people, hundreds of people see it. Now we've had millions of people see it. So we crossed over the 3 million viewers mark in the last 4 months.
Oh, congratulations.
And it's unbelievable, to be frank.
Do you have any moments that you remember from doing that show where somebody arrived at a realization or a conclusion or a big surprising moment? Because it's a show that you have different C-suite leaders on talking about what they know and sharing their thoughts and these conversations that you've had outside of a studio before. Any interesting aha moments or memories from doing that show?
So I've had some incredible reflections. I've had 2 guests share very personal things that only their family knew about with me in an episode, and I didn't know it until after we recorded. And they said, you know what? I never felt like I had a place to share this, and this was an opportunity. Recently, I have a leader, and she's pretty public about it. You talked about her earlier, Rihanna Hellweller, who just took over Matry. Her and I had a great recent episode on self-leadership. And she's talked about it publicly. I've heard about it from random people in the community who attend the great events that she is a part of. Like, wow, this was really a reflective moment. And her and I are friends and colleagues and have drawn even closer to each other after that episode around self-leadership, and that we all have to take that time to reflect. I have another great episode. Joe Moats, who owns Moats Group, chairman of Moats Group, he shared about a conversation about the weight that leaders carry in their backpack. And it was one of the most visual, I still, to this day, I mean, it was probably 3 years ago. And I still use it as the analogy of leaders, and all of us, not just leaders, all humans, just stick weight in their backpack. And then one day realize how much weight they're really carrying. And sometimes we need to take pause and take the backpack off and, you know, is this really important? Can I make an impact on this? Is this something I should be concerned about? Do I have any authority to change it? Do I need to delegate this topic, let this topic go, and get some of that weight off of our back as humans, not just leaders?
It's got to be really interesting for you hosting a podcast where you're talking to these C-suite leaders about things and not really getting the idea that personal and thoughtful stuff like that is a part of the conversation versus focusing on work and maybe having more meetings and maybe some more staff phone calls, like the more nuts and bolts quantitative work stuff versus, hey, let's talk about how this feels. And like, I think that's a really interesting angle.
Yeah, so that's why originally, Jack, this was called the Talent Magnet Institute podcast, real creative. We had a podcast team who was helping us with production who challenged us to think about, you're really talking about unconventional leadership topics. And then birth this brand.
And that's a way better title.
And then the audience just flew because we unleashed and we captivated an audience like, I want to hear about unconventional leadership. What is it? How do I know if I'm being an unconventional leader? You know, we argue, my dream, I have big dreams. One day I hope unconventional leadership, intentional, specific, directive, very top of mind, omnipresent, becomes conventional, right? I want leaders who care more deeply about the humans they have the privilege of employing than just the job they need to get done. Because once your employees know and your team knows and your colleagues and your stakeholders know that you care more about them and who they become than just the bottom line, again, that's when people show up with their whole self and bring all of their energy. So we talk a lot about unlocking human potential. Every human has unlimited potential inside of them.
Is it difficult to unlock that sometimes, though?
Well,
because so many people do sort of approach a job as like there's a fear sometimes about not wanting to be defined by your job, because that's just one element of your life. You've got a family that maybe you go home to, or parents or friends or whatever, because the fear is that this job may not be in the blood the way family is, right? The idea that the rug could get pulled out from under you. There's a wall that gets put up.
Yeah, I think there's also a component of like, I'm not going to give all of my energy to this job because they don't respect me, they don't treat us well, they don't invest in us, they don't ask us how we're doing. How are you really doing? Which was a recent clip that came from an episode with Nancy Spivey from the Northern Kentucky Chamber, where she said, she defined unconventional leadership of the leaders in the room who said, no, how are you really doing?
Yeah.
Right? When you do all of those things, employees show up differently. Team members show up differently. People change lives. We have the opportunity to change lives every day and unlock potential. How you lead and how you build trust and how you do those things will determine whether or not you're going to be the employer who unlocks it or not.
Yeah, and the how is just as important as anything else. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No.
the how you get there is really important too.
Yes, and it's going to take time, right? You can't go in and say, okay, I care and want to listen and learn all of you. Like, you got to build trust and build relationship. We know the highest performing organizations do that. I know the organizations that our family and our business has had the opportunity to serve. Those employers who care deeply about, who recognize, earlier I mentioned, innovation should be coming from the lowest level of your enterprise. Those where that happens are high performing organizations, right? And I've had the pleasure of working with both. Some that really struggle to unlock potential, and some that, when they retire, the CEO retires, the leader retires or leaves to go pursue something else, employees are emotional because of how impactful that leader was to their career.
Yeah.
We all know them. We've all been around those kind of leaders that we hope call upon us again, or we call and thank for the work that they've done in our lives.
Right.
And that's the leaders we want to create through the work that we do with Centennial, TMI, and the Unconventional Leadership Podcast.
Yeah, see, there we go. You're so good at recapping stuff. I can tell you're a host, because I was going to say, Mike Sipple is the CEO of Centennial, which is a leadership and executive placement organization. You're matchmaking leaders in this community. TMI, Talent Magnet Institute, is a way to develop leaders as they're going along. And then you got the Unconventional Leadership Podcast. Mike, we just have like maybe a minute or so left. Talking about kids real quick, you talked about, the relationship with you and your dad and the professional relationship you've had. You're now also talking about your kids getting involved in stuff. Yeah. What is that like to be looking ahead to having the same relationship that you had with your dad, but passing the torch on?
Yeah, I mean, one, it's humbling. It's a humbling experience. Similar to my dad, it was like, hey, because I've been doing this 27 years. I spent 7 years working in the business to pursue other things. Yeah. I want my children to pursue their greatest dreams. And I think all family businesses should have that same belief, and most do, of like, not only pursue your own dreams, but go and accomplish something elsewhere, right? Do something. And if that boomerang brings you back to the family enterprise, awesome. Then you'll have skills, experiences, worked for other bosses other than your mom or dad, right? So that's pretty powerful. And as an entrepreneur, my wife and I have many LLCs, and we have these two brands, these brands that we've discussed. We have a couple of others. The life of an entrepreneur is quite crazy for most of us.
That's the vibe I've got,
right?
Yeah.
And the fact I have one child who launched a startup for a cardiac heart wearable last year, very sophisticated technology product that he and his team were building. And then I have my youngest has two companies, pressure washing business and sells used golf balls. The fact that they even want to be an entrepreneur is inspiring to me, because we didn't scare them all away, And then my daughter's pursuing her things, and all of our kids are involved in athletics, and somehow I have a child who enjoys golfing in 1,000,000-degree weather, and he's pretty damn good at it. So
it seems like you guys, listen, Mike Sipple, you seem like a pretty well-rounded guy between the business stuff, the development, the family work. It all sort of works together. That's practicing what you preach. Centennial, Talent Magnet Institute. Mike Sipple, thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate having you here.
Thank you so much, Jack.